Let me call this meeting of the Finance Committee of the Winchester Common Council to order. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Sullivan, Mayor Beach,
yes,
and Councilor Bell.
Here. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. This would be the minutes from the rescheduled January 7th, where the meeting was on the 8th. Mayor Beach, I think you were not in attendance, so I looked them over and they looked okay to me. So I'm going to make a motion, I'm going to second, and I'm going to vote to approve the minutes.
Abstain.
Aye. Next item on the agenda, and if I'm out of parliamentary procedure, just let me know. I think we're okay, right? Public comments. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on public comments before the committee? Seeing none, I will close the public comments and move on to the agenda. The first agenda item is the fiscal year 2026 budget overview and update. Presenter is Woodsy the Owl and Dan Hoffman and Marion Celeste.
Thanks, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and go through the slides. We're going over the overview first. Thank you for accommodating me in my illness today. We're not going over any major department budgets, and some of this you heard during the retreat as well. So we'll go through some updates to jump in if anything goes wrong or if I lose connection. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the overview. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I heard here. All right. First off, calendar. No changes since we discussed last. There are, we are still very early in this process. As Celeste was reminding me the other day, we are at meeting like 2 of 12 or something right now. So this is a fairly lengthy process, and we'll get more detail and more information as we go. Moving to the next slide. The fund balance policy. Mary, Celeste, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Okay, so our fund balance policy hasn't changed from the prior years. We're still a target of 20% for unassigned fund balance, which at the end of FY24 we were at 25.5%. So any amount over that 25% just flows into unassigned fund balance. It just stays in the fund balance. Also part of that policy, we have the $2 million for capital reserve, which we are currently sitting at $2 million for that. And as you can see, as I mentioned, anything over the 25% just rolls into fund balance. So now we have
moving on to the general fund highlights on the next slide.
Yep, we're there.
We have submitted increases of, I should point out, just because it's submitted does not mean it is approved, but we ask every year all departments to submit their requests. Sometimes they are necessary, mandatory increases. Sometimes they are focused on a area of priority for council. And sometimes they're just things that we will probably have to do at some point, but they're putting them on our radar now. Staff and I have been thinning through a lot of those requests. So the overall increase is not going to be that high because we're going to whittle it down through the course of this process. This is our revenue neutral number on the next bullets. Total, we've already used some of that fund balance, so really we're probably at around 1.7 million in terms of organic growth. Of course, departments were asked to be very careful in reviewing your budget, recommend cuts. A lot of departments were able to do that with some of the priority items that they had being accommodated without an increase because they found offsetting cuts. Yes, the real estate assessment showed that taxable values in the city went up 13.5%. And it's always confusion this time of year because of the assessment notice to go out. We have to go send those out per state code, and they're structured in the way they are because of state code. Just because someone, and as we've been reminding residents ever since those notices went out, just because the assessed value of your property went up, that doesn't mean there's an automatic rate increase. The council will set what the tax rate is here in the next couple of months. 1 penny on the real estate tax this year equals $490,000. Important number to keep in mind as we go through this process. 1.5% of the meals tax is $975,000. I don't believe I know I'm not proposing a meals rate increase, and I've not heard that request from council, but still good to know. I will be requesting a COLA in this year's budget. That every 1% of COLA is $318,000. Moving on to the next timeline, or the next slide, real estate tax rate timeline. Mayor Celeste, will you go ahead and take this one, please?
So, per state code, anytime there's a biennial reassessment, the locality must calculate a revenue neutral rate. And so that the revenue neutral rate is no more than 1% more of the tax levies from the previous year. So the Commissioner of Revenue is in the process of calculating that rate. We estimate it to be about 73 cents, but that's just a ballpark estimate on our part. So of course the council may, after a public hearing, increase above the revenue neutral rate. So that which you'll be doing here in the coming months, decide what you want the tax rate to be. And the timeline, a lot of that's based on giving, with the due date now moved up for real estate June 5th. To get the tax rate set by April 8th will give the commissioner and the treasurer time to do what they need to get the bills out. So people have at least 30 days before that June 5th date to pay their bills.
Okay, moving right along to the next item in the next slide here is the tax rate history. We just put this in there to show what we've got in terms of the history of a rate. So it says anytime where it is yellow, that just means that it was an assessment year, and we did not go revenue neutral. In fact, in one case in the last decade or so, we have an actual rate increase when we went from 91 to 93 cents in 2019. But since 2019, we have actually reduced our rate by 10 cents. We held it flat for 4 years, went down by 10, kept it flat last year, and here we are. Moving on to the next slide. Select rate comparison. So this is something that we always keep an eye on, make sure that we are in line with our comparator cities. As you both are aware, but a lot of people are not, we offer very different profile of services than counties and other jurisdictions that are either very small or very big. So we compare ourselves to other independent cities roughly of our same size who provide comparable services. Those are things like they pick up trash, they clear snow. Most of them have, I think actually almost all of these have a stormwater utility, police department, things like that. So these are cities that we can actually compare ourselves to. There, I believe all of these folks are also landlocked and cannot annex. I also think it's interesting to put the surrounding county tax rate right next to it. So where you see Manassas, you see Prince William as their surrounding county, just as Frederick is the county surrounding us, of course. We are second to lowest of all our comparator cities. And Fredericksburg actually just got down to 76 because last year was their reassessment year. So they've already wrestled with the revenue neutral question this year. So I suspect, based on the guidance that was given from council at the retreat, that we will not be at 83 cents. I suspect we will be Based on the guidance given, 80 cents or lower, based on the decision made by council at that time. As we go through this process, of course, it is your prerogative to change or adjust that. The other two, meals tax, we are right pretty much in dead center in terms of meal tax. If you're curious why some folks have such a low meals tax, I think you can look at Manassas and see where, although they have a very low meals tax, they also have a significantly higher property tax rate. Of course, that is just a policy decision of their body. We have chosen to lean more on other sources than property tax. And then the motel tax, we are a little higher than the median there. We just increased that 2 years ago. For both these rates, I don't think anybody is talking about actually changing them, although I will say, based on the latest credit card data that we look at, it's useful to point out that the meals tax revenue comes about 94% from people without 22601 credit cards, and the transient tax is obviously even lower, which should be no surprise since it is a hotel tax in the city. But meals tax, I think the numbers we've thrown around previously were around 80%. I would say it's a little bit higher now, based on what we're seeing. So I will move on to the next slide. Next slide, budget compared to CPI. We went over this. I won't go over it in too much detail other than point out that we generally keep up with inflation. When you look past, I've shared this slide in past years, and it holds true this year, we generally keep up with inflation. Our budget is not on some type of escalator where it continues to go up, outstripping inflation and other factors. We generally each year do enough to keep up with it, which is why when you look over the last 20 years, our budget actually looks relatively flat when you factor in for inflation. So that's a good thing. That means we're keeping up with our obligations, we're keeping up with our infrastructure, we're paying our employees a respectable amount. So, and this year I anticipate that inflation, based on numbers looking at, will probably be right around 3%. Moving along.
Could I just clarify
operating increases?
Dan, I just want to clarify one thing on that graph there.
Okay.
The fifth column over, where we're tracking inflation. I know the last column is inflation growth, but the inflation CPI, is that in basis points?
No, that's an indicator that our FA used from, I forget the actual, it's a source.
It's a source.
We usually
It's an urban indicator.
It's an indicator that's used as a standard. I forget the website you got it from. I'm sorry, I couldn't grab that.
So what am I looking at? Just the year-over-year change in it?
Yes. Yeah, she just pulled it for the corresponding year.
Okay.
Trying to see
I think our footnote cut off.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Sure.
Moving along, must-do operating increases. I like the bluntness of this slide. Must-do, meaning these are things you're not going to be able to avoid. The first one, top of the list, is actually something you already approved. That was the 1% in public safety adjustments last year. In IT, we have software maintenance agreements that are going up. Multiple departments, across departments, and we just kind of bundled this up. Vehicle fuel and maintenance continues to increase. We can't choose to not put fuel in vehicles. We can't choose to not repair them. That's, when you look across the city, almost $200,000. Things like our refuse, our landfill fees, can't control that. Upgrading the JJC for building code requirements, water sewer fees for facilities. That's just the beginning of must-do operating increases. We don't have health insurance yet. That'll be another one. And although not a must-do, we haven't even factored in a COLA. So as you can see, even without health insurance, 1.3 is spent. And this is not even an exhaustive list of all the things that we must do. A lot of times residents will ask, well, how is it things keep going up? Well, that's because our costs keep going up. we are not immune to cost increases. So that is just a snapshot of what some of those are. Moving on to the next slide. Like I said, health insurance, do not know yet what that is going to be. Hope to know later this month or early in March. Cost of living, so that's 319 per percentage point. If we keep up with inflation, that is 3. So the minimum, as I bring you guys more defined scenarios in the coming meetings, I'm going to be asking for 3% as a minimum. For a COLA, I think that's competitive with what other jurisdictions are doing, and that's really what I see as the bare minimum. And we also do not know what the request will be from Winchester Public Schools. For now, we're doing what we typically do, and that is assuming about 1/3 of new revenue. But we'll see what the schools come back with. Any discussion on those slides? Otherwise, we'll get into the department budgets.
Mayor Beach?
Yeah, just a quick question, Dan. On the calendar, I could have asked this when you went through it, but it has March 25th. We're to do the first reading of the not to exceed tax rate, correct?
Correct.
But we're getting the school's budget presentation at the same time. It doesn't give us much time to absorb their budget.
So they don't approve their budget until the day before, on the 25th, but the superintendent we will know what their request is, and we'll have a pretty good idea what their request is by March 11th. And I've invited the superintendent to attend the council meeting on March 11th to answer any questions you may have about where they're at in their process and their request.
Yeah, any information they can get to us earlier would help, instead of the same time we set the not to exceed. Thank you.
Council Bell,
Okay.
if you mind if I can address Council Bell's question on like CPI inflation.
Sure.
It was from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a CPI for all urban consumers. It's all items in U.S. city average. They came from FRED, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And
Okay.
that year over year, correct?
Okay. Yeah, the question that I had, I think this may be working backwards in the slide presentation. But Dan, in the major unknowns, I know you said health insurance, hopefully we'll know by the end of this month, early March, but certainly in advance of when we start getting full traction on the budget. And the COLA that you're suggesting, that's going to be in addition to the $650, which is a must-do?
Correct.
Okay, because that's just a continuation of the mid-year COLA that was approved in the current budget. So next year's
Yes.
budget has to absorb that amount.
Correct.
Okay. So that answers that. And I think for all of us to understand, it's like we're looking at these 3 tax categories: real estate, meals, and transient occupancy. And I'm shocked by the numbers. I mean, I know it's generally higher than when we were saying it was 75 to 80% meals tax was generated from non-22601. I thought, wow, that's really incredible. Because that really shows the diversification of our tax base. That this is not all falling on the shoulders of the citizens of Winchester. Similar to the transient occupancy, that's, like you said, that's kind of almost self-intuitive that it should be somewhere north of 95% for transient occupancy. But we consider growth in those 2 categories organic growth, right? As well as sales tax, which is not in this presentation. But I mean, it's ideal when you can have you've tweaked all your valves to generate the revenue influx that meets the needs of the city through organic growth. Real estate taxes just don't fit into that category. You could try and convince yourself it does, but it doesn't. As assessments go up, is that organic growth or responding to the market? Because the market is specifically what drives that. And as a reminder to everybody, we're only taxing 77.5% of our land area because 22.5% is tax exempt. So that is the area. Granted, we've got some that participate in pilots where we do get some revenue from those, but for the most part, it's the burden is on the tax-paying property owner. I think that's important for us to know. But we have no control over market demand. We have no control over it whatsoever, except that if you have a good city, if you have a good community, people are going to want to come here. People want to come here, it's going to rise the demand. Rise the demand, it rises the values. You could take the converse of that and say, well, if we don't want people coming here, if we want property values to be low, we would make ourselves less attractive. I don't think that's what anybody wants to see. We also have to reconcile when you're looking at the tax rate history. We had a year where the tax rate went up 9%, 9 cents to the revenue neutral. That's when real estate assessments tanked. So these are things, again, we don't have any control over, and we just have to be aware of not so much the tax assessed values, but the revenue necessary to run an efficient city and meet the expectations of the quality of life that we're looking at. Are there any other questions on this? This is really kind of an overview just for us to be able to digest. My hope is that all members of council will have the opportunity to review this as well. I would say from a committee structure, we're not really upping or downing this. It's just we're getting an advanced look at it.
This is just for information.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions, Mayor Leach?
If I could. So Dan, just in a nutshell, organic increase in the revenue, organic growth would be about 1.7 without any revenue from the real estate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so whatever number ends up on the tax rate, every cent goes up about $490,000 on top of that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Unless there's anything else for this presentation, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the proposed administrative department budgets. Dan, you're going to continue with that with the assistance of Mary and Celeste.
All right. So we're going to go through a lot of the smaller departments today that would go through this committee. Of course, on the second slide, you get the budget calendar again. Today we're going to go over elections, commissioner revenue, circuit court, general district, JD relations court, clerk, my office, legislative affairs, city council, comms, attorney, HR finance, risk, IT, and GIS. So let's go ahead and roll through them. Very first one, and I'm not sure if Liz is there.
She is.
Yes.
Excellent. So it's a good time
from
for
the
me
treasurer's
to
office.
start off by saying that any
Okay. Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
constitutionals and positions like Liz are, they're not under necessarily my purview. Liz is not my employee. Constitutional officers are not my employee. So I let them know that I bring forward their requests, typically without a lot of filter. What Ms. Martin is requesting is about $81,000 to $90,000 for a full-time deputy director position. Their operating has gone down mainly because their temp help is not needed next year because of the it's not a presidential year. They are also asking for just shy of $128,000 to replace their voting machines. If you were to add this position into the budget, we would have to make some corresponding adjustments elsewhere. And I'll let Liz speak to the timeliness and need for the voting machine replacement. Liz?
Okay, do you want the voting system first? So, sorry. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Nice to be here, everyone. Thanks for listening to me. The voting system typically all voting systems have a life expectancy of roughly 10 years. The current system was acquired in 2016. We've seen some wear and tear. There's some additional functions that state code requires for it to do, so upgrades from the vendor have had to be performed. But it's going to work until it doesn't, and I don't think we're in a really bad place. I just would like for council to be aware of that expense coming at us in the next couple years, if not this year. It's something we need to be aware of and look at. So, like I said, 2016, so we're not quite there yet, and it might go 11 or 12 years, but we just want to know that we need to buy it when we do. And it's not actually that big of an increase as 10 years ago. It was about 90 to 100 when I first started. It was, to go up to 120 from that over 10 years isn't terrible. As far as an increase, I was really surprised. And that is based on a quote from 2 different vendors. Okay, so that takes care of the voting system part. So,
Do you want to address
Do we-
your...
Do we want to hit the questions as we go through?
Yeah, do you want me to keep talking, or do you want me to talk? Do you all want to address one thing at a time?
Go ahead, cover everything, and then
Okay,
we'll
so
come
the
back at it.
additional position has been needed for a while, but I basically made do. I have been making do with the staff. You have to remember that I have 2 roles according to the statute. I'm the General Registrar of Voters. I am also an administrator called a Director of Elections. 2 entirely different functions. I wear 2 hats. I have a Deputy Registrar. I do not have a Deputy Director of Elections. And the work involved with administering elections increases each year, has increased substantially in the last 6 years. What is required administratively to run elections? I mean, and you some of it you're all aware of. You participate in either early voting, or you're aware we have same-day registration, or you're aware that we have to now accept ballots days afterwards and days before. It's just grown exponentially in the last few years, and it is too much for one person to do. I have a staff of 2 humans, and we are cracking down the middle with the demand placed on us. So, more? Okay, so, yes, actually a salary adjustment, thank you. The salary adjustment for the person who is already on staff. And that's because her salary was, now I want to speak in terms of the position separate from the person. So position management here. The position was regraded 2 years ago from an 8 to a 12. But the person holding that position should be roughly mid-grade. And in that increase that year, the mid-grade didn't follow her. The position was regraded due to the work involved. But she has 9 years experience. So separate from the position and the responsibilities with that position is someone who's mastered certain skills and has the level of experience and performance that she should have landed mid-range. And so I'm trying to fix something that 2 years ago didn't occur. So that is part of the personnel increase there. Then with the operating decrease, you have to realize that we are saving money not only because we have we will expect fewer part-time help, less part-time help rather, because we're not a presidential year, but we have one less election this year. But that is a thing where I always try to be prepared for the worst and send people home when we have lighter duty. One more thing to add that wasn't a factor when I did this is I had a regular part-time employee who worked at least 1 day a week and then several days a week during the 2 months before an election, who is no longer with us. So until I know what to do with our permanent addition proposal, I'm not quite sure what to do. We were piecemealing someone back in temporarily in that part-time position right now. But right now I'm saving by not having a third part-time person here on staff.
Okay.
Questions?
Les?
Yeah, if I may, Mary Celeste, on here, it's got budget, but we're mixing operating numbers here with capital expense, right? It's just shown on the graph.
Yeah, it's the whole,
Just
it's their
the
operating
total
and the
request,
capital.
yeah.
Mhm.
But the machines are not going to be under the operating budget. They'd be under capital.
Well, it's operating capital, so, yeah. It shows up in the general fund. You know, each department has some operating capital. If it doesn't meet a capital improvement
But it's only
definition-
one time.
Yes,
Okay.
it's one time. Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And with that capital expenditure, when you said the current machines were purchased in 2016, and you expect about a 10-year life cycle
That's
out
what
of
you
them.
should allow for. Yeah.
How many devices is this?
11.
11.
One of those was bought with COVID money. We always had 10. Well, no, I should say 19. But the typical tabulator that you put your ballot into, there are 11 of those.
Okay.
There are separate ones that are ADA, ballot marking. They're not a ballot marking device. The ADA thing that pairs up with each one. So if you need to create a ballot in an ADA format,
Okay.
and it creates a ballot, that has to accompany it, the tabulator. So
Okay.
total units we have that all get the same programming, 19.
Okay. But the request to upgrade or replace are those tabulators?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we could do either way. We have two different quotes. We can keep the ADA units as they are, and they will still create a ballot that can still be read on a new tabulator. The things that get the wear and tear are the the tabulators. The ADA devices are reliable, but they feel very analog, but they will work. So the vendor that we currently have, we could save a substantial amount of money by keeping the same vendor, keeping the ADA unit, and just use the wear and tears on the tabulator.
Right.
So if you voted early in our office, depending on what date you used, you were using a demo model that we are test running. That is a much faster one. But anyway, we would be upgrading to that model citywide, and it would be we'd be able to maintain, and there would be a, let's see, $40,000 savings here. But I'm giving you the max, the 120.
40,000 would be
Out of the
if we
127.
kept the 7.
Yeah, if
88
we
bucks.
kept, yeah. So
Okay.
out of that 127, that's the max if we replaced everything.
Got it.
But if we stayed with the one vendor, we'd be spending between 70 and 80,000.
And regardless of new devices, the software and maintenance of the equipment, that's already baked into your operating budget. Okay. All right. Any other questions for the Office of Elections?
Good.
Okay.
Thanks,
Let me
Liz.
know if you need
Appreciate
any
it.
more nuts and bolts.
All right. Anybody here representing?
Counselors,
Yep.
before I move to the next one, do you want to give me any direction on these items?
Just the two of us? I would say I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay. No guidance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Dan.
No guidance there.
Yep. I think this is the budget overview we're at right now, so it's kind of just information gathering and absorbing. Anybody here representing Commissioner Revenue, or we're just putting that one before
No,
us?
she wasn't able to attend.
Well,
so.
it looks pretty
Yes.
minor increase.
All right. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Revenue, software contract increase, no major changes there.
Okay.
Any questions?
Nope. Circuit Court?
Circuit Court, very small changes here, nothing major. Cost share, those are the latest percentages between Winchester, Frederick, and Clark. Happy to take any questions there.
No? No questions?
All right, hearing none. General District Court, no increase. Any questions?
Nope.
All right, hearing none. Same with JDC Relations Court. Any questions?
Nope. We like 0 budget increases. Those are great.
Yep. And the hits keep coming here. Clerk Circuit Court.
Yep.
Tiny adjustment there, nothing major. Hearing no questions.
Nope.
Moving right along.
Nope.
Dan, back on the courts, if they
Yep.
if they had, let's say, a request for another machine at the doors or something, would that be under these list of courts that we just went through, or would that be under something else?
It would be under the sheriff's budget.
You're
Courthouse
talking about the
security.
sheriff?
All right.
Courthouse security.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It appears we
Courthouse
are.
sheriff and courthouse security all are under the Public Health and Safety Committee.
Okay.
Okay. So we're on to city council.
Yeah.
No
All right.
changes?
City Council, no changes there.
Bunch
Okay.
of cheap people.
Legislative Affairs, no operating increase there. Moving along. My office budget, 0 operating increase there.
Okay.
I'm going to pause here for a minute. We do have an AV, a part-time AV position. Right now, we contract that out. We can save a little money, and we move some money around, make some offsetting cuts to position this. This is this person. I think you've already met this person, Jay Vaughn, who handles a lot of the.
He can hear you.
AV work for us.
Be nice.
Oh, is he right there?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So look directly at him as you approve this budget. So the only thing I want to point out here, because a lot of that is offset with moving the digital services contract in-house, the increase here is really the calendar. We have not bumped this number up, I think, in a couple of years. We always just kind of figure how much it's going to cost. So it is about an $11,000 increase for printing the calendar. I'm assuming none of you want to cut the calendar, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Les, any questions?
Just on the mailing, is that the by carrier, and is that only hit the city, or what is that, by request? How do we decide where it gets mailed?
The calendar just goes to people in the city.
226
just the city
one.
addresses.
Because some of those carriers actually go into the county a little bit if you do it by carrier, which is the cheapest way to do it. But okay.
Dan, my only question is, let's see, we've got, so the personnel increase, and then there's a decrease in services. Trying to reconcile the FY26 budget item of 26.5 to the 28.250.
Those are connected. That's where the offsetting cut is.
Okay. So all that math put together comes up with,
Well, the one side, the digital services, was in the IT budget. So you're not going to see the cut in their table.
okay.
So we basically cut money out of the IT budget and moved it into comms. In effect.
Okay.
Is that good?
All right.
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okie dokie. If there are no more questions from comms, I'll move along to legislative affairs.
Oh, city attorney.
City.
So you blew past legislative affairs. That was a zero,
Oh,
right?
Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. City attorney, are we on city attorney now?
Yes.
Oh, my bad. I backed up. City attorney, no changes here other than the fact that in last year's budget, we only budgeted for half a year of the paralegal position because we didn't anticipate we'd have to hire that position. We were right about not having to hire it until mid-year. Unfortunately, we don't have a city attorney yet. So I think if things stay on track and we hire an attorney in this next attempt, everybody will be in-house by the time this new fiscal year starts. So we should go ahead and budget for the full year of the paralegal position for that office. So that's the only, so, you know, council's already given me this direction. So, there's really no true increase here other than what has already been approved by council. Happy to take any questions on this one.
Nope. We're good. Human resources.
Okay. HR. So some of these we need to do. The 2,700 dues, memberships, yearly driving checks, that kind of stuff. I do want to add, and this number can be, I will be adjusting it based on the scenarios that we'll be putting together. So in that 76 to 80 cent range, depending on where we end up, that amount might decrease. We've trimmed out a lot of training out of the budget over the years. I would love to have a centralized pot that we used for training in HR. Right now, we just do it as we can. So I'd like to put that in there to cover a lot of the citywide trainings that cover really across departments. Different departments have their own training budgets in many cases, but this is for training, more citywide training on different things. Those are the only increases for HR. Like I said, that $25,000 for employee training will probably adjust depending on where you're at with the rate. If it is probably closer to 76, there will probably be, I probably would cancel this out. But if we get closer to 80, I will most likely have this amount in or somewhere in between.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions you have.
The training on that, exactly what is that?
So it's a lot of, in some cases, it's citywide training related to safety requirements. It could be for specific groups or employees within the city that need to get a particular certification. So we may offer, project management training of some sort. We have our emerging leaders program, which is management training for employees who are aspiring to move up the ranks. It's a good retention tool for us to keep folks. Those are the primary uses for it.
It sounds like like you say, the safety and everything. It could easily offset the cost for that. Thank you.
It's for an organization our size. It's a fairly, and the number of employees we have, it's a reasonable amount.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Moving right along, the finance department. They always come with no increase because they're the finance department and they're very cautious with our money. So no increases for finance. Happy to answer any questions you have there.
I don't think there are any.
Celeste and Mary, this is your opportunity to, while I'm not there, to ask for a bunch of money for your department. Go ahead.
Oh, but you are here, Dan.
See.
You are.
They know better.
We'll turn the owl off.
Plus, if there was anybody that was going to ask for decreasing their budget, I know it's not them. So,
Okay.
All right, moving along. Moving along to finance.
External.
Auditors. No increases for our auditors. And then finally, I think we're going to wrap up on IT and GIS.
Okay.
This first bullet. So there is an unfunded position. So in the last year's budget, people seem to have forgotten, except for my department directors, that we actually cut 4 positions out of last year's budget. One of those positions that was cut was a position in the IT department. I would love to reinstitute this position, but I will say this is also going to be a position that is subject to where we end up in those scenarios in the range. If we end up closer to 79 or 80 on that end, I'll probably be able to work this in. If we end up on 76, 77, this is probably going to go to the wayside. But it is we have ever increasing IT expectations and demands on the cybersecurity front. We do a lot of our own stuff in house, which saves us money. But that is, so this is a position I would love to add this year. At some point, I believe we will need to add it, but it is in here for this year. The next line, the operating at 327, this was actually on the must-do list earlier. These are software maintenance fees, license fees, personal property, all the things that we're bringing online over in the Commissioner Revenue's office, all the things we're bringing online over in planning and permits, all those are cloud services, all those are annual software maintenance fees. So this is a must-do thing. We already have these licenses. In some cases, they are increases. 86 of it is for our phone system, which is end of life. So we are getting away from the old phone system, analog phone system, and implementing a VoIP system, a voice over IP system. In essence, this money is for additional connections, wireless devices, and switch over to VoIP. There is, as we retire the old phone system, there will be some savings, but this is what we need to switch over. And then capital costs. These are things that, again, most of them we've been kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. Very rarely do we replace something a year or two before it's due. In this case, they're PC refresh, so people's individual computers that are reaching end of life. We have a switch that needs to be replaced, and we have to replace the storage, the digital storage at City Hall and Timbrook Public Safety Center. Those things are not cheap. Nothing in this space ever is. I think of all our departments, this is one that's probably seen the most growth, but just because we're adapting to evolving tech needs and trying to get as many services online as possible. So that is this particular budget. I'll wait. GIS is small. We'll hit that in a second, but happy to take any questions about these things. And is Orlando there, Mary Celeste?
He is not.
No, he's not. He had to go to Richmond, I think.
Yeah.
Les?
Yeah, if I could. Dan, appreciate all this information. It looks good to me. Just a question on the side. How are we on our backup systems where we're copied over our data and our system? Are we okay on that?
Yeah, we're good. A lot of this, one of the things that we're going to be replacing in the next couple of years is our document management system, which will be much more reliable. We are currently getting prices for that, and we'll be ready for this year's budget, but we're actively planning for a new document management system. All these switches and all these storage, all the storage is also connected to that. And we've got a pretty good continued continuity of operations plan in place for that kind of stuff.
Great. Thank you.
All right. My question is the replace the digital scanning system. When you say system, is that a device or is that a citywide system that's used?
It's citywide system. Well, right now the system that we have is pretty small. It only covers a couple departments, so this would expand people that we could scan and actually go paperless with some things where we would be able to. Like right now in my office, we have like a stack of paper this every 2 weeks for accounts payable. It could transition us to like a paperless system. Plus replace what we're scanning now for our accounts payable checks. It just would help us better search features and that type of stuff. Yeah.
Not to be the Debbie Downer, but we're never going to be paperless.
Well,
it's a great.
That's usually my role. That's what.
What
but Orlando keeps telling me we can get there, so I'm
okay.
like, okay,
right.
I'm willing. I'm being a good sport about it, but.
All right.
We are finance and we do like our paper, so. Okay.
So when we call it a system, this is like a device storage system as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this would handle like public works.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So like commissioner, treasurer,
Parks as
all
well.
parks and recs, all that stuff, everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know they are looking at a couple different options, so that number could come down.
Yeah, I think we actually anticipate it's going to come down a little bit, but
It hasn't been
we'll see.
bid yet.
All right.
All right. If there are no other questions on IT, last one, GIS, actually a decrease. Our GIS team is. I'll take a minute to brag on them a little bit. Our GIS crew, when I get a a moment to talk with folks from other jurisdictions or other city managers when we get to talking about IT stuff or GIS capabilities. We have an incredibly talented team, not a large team. Our GIS team provides services across the city to all departments and our residents. We are very lucky to have built a homegrown team of GIS folks that is really high end. I can see folks in the room nodding. I think we all agree Kyle and his folks are fantastic. So
that's good to hear.
Unless you have any questions on that budget, that kind of wraps up all of our departments for the day. Happy to take any other additional guidance or questions you might have.
So we've covered the administrative budgets, and I know with a lot of the software implementation systems launch that are being proposed, particularly through the Commission of Revenue, that is already budgeted or baked into the current operating budget. So we should actually be seeing the benefits of those upgrades this year?
Some. Partially. It'll be partially implemented.
Okay.
Of entities, that's the one you're specifically talking about. Tax billing.
Yep. It's always nice when you invest in software that you actually see the benefit.
Yeah, we did procurement and we see benefit from that, and the bids we get, the number has been amazing. Since we've gone electronics, no one brings their bids in physically anymore. They're online. It's been wonderful.
Okay. That's great. All right, Dan, you got the budget calendar, which I think we talked about in the prior section,
We did.
and then a discussion slide, but kind of talked about it as we went along. Is there anything else we need to talk about on this presentation?
No, I think we've covered everything. Mary, Celeste, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
All right, I think Mayor Beach got a couple more questions.
Yeah, Dan, just going over the budget, just to summarize it, it looks like you're going to Public Health and Safety on the 19th, and then in front of PED on the 27th, and then it comes back to Finance at the beginning of March.
That's correct. We'll have another, beginning of the March Finance Committee meeting. We're going to have a couple other departments to go through. We didn't, Jeff Barber wasn't available today, so we're going to do the Treasurer's budget in March, along with a few other cleanup items. By that time, our hope is that we will have some more specifics in terms of at least a ballpark of what the schools are asking for, with the level of our health insurance increase. So we'll have some more data for you coming in at the Finance Committee meeting. I'll also give you kind of a roll-up as to where things landed with the other committees.
So at the Finance Committee in March 4th, what are you looking to come out of that meeting with? Or do you want decisions and directions on some of the budget allotments, yay or nay, thumbs up or thumbs down, or dollar amounts, or what? And also for planning, PED and health and safety, probably want the same thing, correct?
Yep, everybody, I want as much guidance as I can get. So if there's a position that is not a priority for you this year, that's one of the things I need to hear. If there's things you want to put off, I can go ahead and start dropping things off the budget. The sooner the better. But for now, in all the committees, it's really just guidance more than anything else.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I think that those items that were discussed today, you know, it's obviously it's up to you and your responsibility to figure out which budget scenario they can fit in. I don't think there's any direction from the two of us that would say fit these in every scenario. It's what's going to be best for the city and the organization based on the budget scenarios suggested by council. So. Okay.
Yeah, and in the March Finance Committee meeting, you're going to have 3 distinct scenarios to chew on to.
That's where the thumbs will come into play. Okay, unless there's any other discussion on that item, we'll move into the last agenda item, which is the December 2024 budget summary. It's the current fiscal year through the end of the calendar year.
That's correct. So, I don't think it's...
How are we looking, Celeste?
We're on track. We're, as you can see, sales tax receipts are up a little bit over last year. November's comparable, but overall the year-to-date's up. General property taxes are up slightly. Sales tax up 5.7%. Lodging, of course, is up. Meals is up. Expenditures are up. Everything's up. But we're tracking towards budget. The only which I mentioned when I was here before talking about the budget summary is personal property tax. We are keeping an eye on that one. It's running behind projections. So I know we're working with
Which one? You said personal
property taxes.
Okay.
So we're working with the treasurer and the commissioner on that to see what we can do or what that issue is. So, but we are keeping a close eye on that. But otherwise, everything else is tracking towards budget. Even with the personal property, I think it'll track towards budget. But we are a little bit down from last year. Utilities is on track from where they should be. I know I'm going to be working on kind of reworking this summary sheet a little bit for you and doing it in a little different format because I know you had requested some information on stormwater. So I did add one little blurb there about stormwater. The collections are about $2 million this year, which is about 53.6%. It's under the highlights under the utility side. The budget there is 3.8 for those are the fees, the stormwater utility fees. So I am projecting based on 7 months of revenue that we'll hit about $4 million in the stormwater fees. Stormwater had borrowed about $14 million last year, and they have about 1.3 left of that $14 million. So to date, they've spent 12.7 on projects. So they're moving along. They're getting things done. The average on the stormwater fee is about $338,000 a month is what we're collecting at this point on the stormwater fee. And current year-to-date expenses in the stormwater fund is about $8.6 million of what's been spent so far this year. So like I said, a lot of that includes the bond proceeds.
Right.
And they will be going out. And Perry's working March meeting to bring forward another bond issuance for stormwater.
For the stormwater.
VRA
Yes.
spring pool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But other than that, I think unassigned fund balance, as of December, about 24.1, which is down from June 30th, but there's still lots of revenues to collect between now and the end of the year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Celeste. On this, the personal property, if you were to project that for a whole year till the end of the year, calendar year or budget year, what would it right now extrapolate to? A loss of the personal
The budget's
property?
about 14.8 for that, so we're at about $9.5 million right now. What we've collected so far. There'll be a billing will go out. The due date change, so that could affect the revenue a little bit because that due date we're moving to June 5th. I keep wanting to say December 5th, but June 5th. So that could delay the collections a little bit. So they may spill over into the next fiscal year. So that could affect the revenue for 25. So.
And I'm just wondering if, in case we have to backfill
Right.
a loss there in some
I mean, the
other
billings are
revenue.
there to support the revenue, so it's just a matter of collections getting
Okay.
there. So,
And our track record in collections
it's,
pretty reliable.
Of each yearly billing, we typically end up writing off about a little less than 300,000 of it. So, which is you're billing 9 million each year. So that's pretty good. So the collections are there.
Okay.
But, the treasurer has lots of different things he can do, tools he can use. The state allows him to do collections. You can do the DMV stops, all different types of things. But
Okay. All right. Any other questions for this presentation?
I appreciate it. I know this is a busy time for you all, and I appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. We will be coming back probably next month too, in line with what Celeste said, changing a little bit of this format. The rating agencies have also changed some of their criteria. I think we talked about this a couple months ago, but We're looking at our policies too, from fund balance, debt, to stay more in line with what they're looking for. So we'll bring that probably next month. Debt is a big issue, fund balance, and revenues. Three big hits we just have to keep in our minds as we go through this budget process.
Okay. All right. Unless there's any other questions, that's the last item on our agenda for this meeting. So unless there's any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
That's not bad.
Bye, everybody.